So 1927, there's a National Geographic. More advertisements. 40% of miners in Picher are reported to have silicosis, a lung condition caused by dust inhalation. Causes lung cancer, or is lung cancer, or just, it's like the pre-lung cancer kind of type disease. So yeah, things are already going bad for the miners in Picher. 1928. We are just about getting to the end of this showdown. So this Robert Cahill is arguing that studies should be conducted by the industry and not at public expense. So that's what they're advocating for. And the National Lead forms Lead Industries Association to really start stepping up the propaganda. So they're countering their 1921 admission of that lead is a poison. So they're basically saying lead industries are receiving a lot of undesirable publicity. And yeah, so they are partnering with DuPont and Ethel at this point. So this is all starting to take form in 1928. 1929. I got a little bit more information on Cahill's salary. Oh, so this is when his salary begins. Sorry, $100,000 every year in 1929, equivalent to several million today.
Oh boy.
Yeah, so that's his personal salary. And this doctor he's 30 years old at the time. And then I found this cool little graphic. It begins in the 1930s. This is from Picher, Oklahoma, and it shows the timeline of cave-ins in Picher, Oklahoma. So I know it's probably a little blurred out on the screen, and the graphic itself is kind of small. But it has all the different cave-ins, and this becomes relevant later on when Picher, Oklahoma becomes a ghost town. But it has a long history of problems. So the mining is like hitting them on several fronts is kind of the point there. 1933, we have more ads, Norman Rockwell-esque ads. 1934, highest rate of tuberculosis in the country in Picher, Oklahoma. And then I have a quote here. Yeah, so it's the miners are like getting sick and dying. But I have a quote here this is a guy that's going to pop up later on when he's older. His nickname is Hoppy. He's a miner in Picher, Oklahoma. So he describes how the miners staged a strike in Galena, Kansas, and things got out of hand and a riot took place. 9 people were killed. But the miners did eventually win, and they got the benefits they were after. So this began in 1935, ended in 1939. So this is they were fighting for basic rights, the miners were, at this point.
Old Hoppy, I'll work around the lead, but you got to pay me that bonus. Hold on.
Never mind the lung cancer and the dying. Yeah, we want... So, 1936, 90% of... Oh, how did I skip over the final decision? Man, did you guys notice that back there?
I didn't know what year the final decision was. I was figuring it was coming, but...
Yeah, because So, oh man, I skipped right over it. So we. Oh, okay, okay. It was back in 1926. My bad. So, following the inconclusive 1926 report of the Surgeon General's Committee that there was no basis for concluding that leaded fuels posed any health threat whatsoever, committee approved the use of TEL in gasoline and sales were immediately resumed. So, yeah, sorry, I skipped over that one. It was like right under where Robert Cahill was basically advocating that the industry do the reports and the investigations from that point on. So they win. They get their way. The industry is basically now in control of the information.
Oh, good. That's exactly who we need to be checking on all this. The people are saying that there's no problem.
Yeah.
And that stand to profit from there being no problem. Okay, yeah, all this sounds good. Let's keep going.
Yeah. Sorry, I meant to make that more of. I wanted that to hit harder, but I should have highlighted it. I missed it. But yeah, so sales are nationwide now. 90% of gasoline contains lead, and Ethyl Corporation is expanding in Europe. We have more propaganda from the LIA.
I like how it damn near spells the word liar. It's Lia.
I got a quote from a longtime miner. He speaks with fondness of his days as a miner. He really enjoyed it down there. The miners are cool in the summer and warm in the winter. He's not bragging about his days as a gouger, but no one seems to blame him or the other gougers who are long gone. So, Albury said many gougers would sweeten their mining load by adding zinc ore dynamited from pillars found throughout the mines. There is gouging in every mine in the Picher field. They removed pillars until you could not get any more. So he's basically describing, this is, the miners would leave pillars, obviously, to support the mine, to support the cavities. But at a certain point, they started stealing from those pillars, and it's called gouging. So they just, over the years, got thinner and thinner. And this is where...
To fatten up their wheelbarrows or whatever.
Yep. Because
Yeah.
it was... In some cases, they had to leave, like, the rich veins just to support the roof. So now they're going back through and getting that out. And this is the cause of the cave-ins.
Well, who could have seen it coming?
Yeah, and this is actually common. It's like but it's really bad in the Picher area. So I have a ad in 1939. It's got some cool pictures of like the exposed lead pipe before it's buried. I thought that was kind of cool to throw that in there. I'm going to skip a few years. In 1943, a report comes out on learning disabilities in children. So they are really starting to focus on the early effects of it. Evaluation of 20 children found 19 of the 20 were intellectually impaired. Also in 1943, LA Times reports the city's first major smog episode. So people are starting to have a problem with pollution in general. It's not really focused on lead particularly at this point.
Were those 20 kids tested because they had some sort of pre-existing abnormality, or did they just find out that 95% of kids were impaired?
I don't know. On a lot of these, I'm just kind of gathering the headlines. So that would be a good thread to pull as like early studies on children, like why and. But I mean, there was. Let's see, what was it? Like the end of the 19th century, there was like another report of lead poisoning in children. So this like it's still just kind of a common theme.
That's just had such a high percentage. It's just
That's
incredible.
true. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's true.
that's kind of terrifying, actually.
The walls are sugar, though, Dennis. I mean,
Yeah,
paint chips, that's what kids used to do. Like, that was the problem.
yeah, you'd have to look at what's going on, like, because these kids are probably like, yeah, live in houses that are painted with lead. They drink water that comes from lead. They drive cars that are burning lead. I mean, it's just crazy.
It's everywhere.
So, and this is now spanning. Yeah, that's the other point. So this is like spanning generations now. So, and it's just building. It continues to get worse. So 1944, Thomas Midgley contracts polio, devises an elaborate system of ropes and pulleys to lift himself out of bed, becomes entangled in the device, and dies of strangulation.
Finally, something good happened.
What a weird, what a very Pee Wee Herman way to die. That's just very.
Yeah, I'm not even sure how I read that, but I was just like, oh, I'm throwing that in.
Well, yeah, I'm glad you did. Like, that's great. I'm so glad to hear he finally kicked it and only made it to 51. He could have had another 20, 30 years of just terribleness.
Right, yeah, so this is the guy that brought us Freon also. So the early, it's Freon, right? The early coolant that was like taking out our ozone layer.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just stopped using it not that long ago. There's still cars that use it.
Right. I mean, it was, I guess if you look into it, like it was a major step forward at the time because the stuff before was like even more toxic.
Yeah.
But yeah, so anyway.
Look, I still don't like Midgley. You're not going to change my opinion on this. Although I do like air conditioning quite a bit.
Right.
It is ironic that he was killed by one of his own inventions. That is like the ultimate, even though it was the weirdest invention yet.
Well, he was into chemicals. He shouldn't have been trying to build contraptions like that. That was not in his wheelhouse.
This is true. Yes.
The man works with poisons. That's what he does.
Okay, so in 1946, yeah, so this era is, we're still in like the leaded gasoline era, but we're starting to see the early warning signs, and you're starting to get people who are like, oh, you know that all those bad things they said was going to happen? Yeah, it's happening.
Oh, we saw early warning signs like so long ago. These are just like late, bigger warnings. Yeah. It's crazy that these are what they're considered early. Like, no, you guys, we were talking about this like a long time ago.
Right. Yeah, that's true. I keep saying that. Like, yeah. Oh, yeah. But remember, 500 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, in this country, just not even that long before, the 40s or whatever, the 20s, it was getting said quite a bit. I don't know.
Right. And these were like, this was Yale and Harvard and the Surgeon General. I mean, like the right people knew,
And it still didn't matter.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So, warning of mines filling with water and contaminating springs and streams. So we have this crazy acronym of this group. This is 1946. Part of a mine shaft subcommittee. Oh no! So this study came out subcommittee 2000. Let's see. So this, subcommittee 2000. Well, I don't have. This is the acronym for it, but I apparently don't have the full name. So, kind of missing data on that part. But if you search this, I'm sure it will point it up, but so they're basically warning that so these abandoned so starting at this point, mines are starting to reach the end of their life, so they're becoming abandoned, and if they are not pumped regularly, they will fill with water. And then they are just warning that these mines that will fill with water, if we stop these pumps, will eventually, the water will seep out and contaminate springs, streams, and, fresh water supply. So this was a warning in 1946.
Unexpected consequences now.
Right. And we'll get into it later, but as you can imagine, we again ignore the warning. So in 1947, and I highlighted this one big, Ethel's patent expires. And so competition begins to enter. And so this starts, what I'm guessing had to be like kind of hurt their bottom line a little bit. And then I have the title page or the content page from a national lead company product. So they still have a lot of products available which contain lead. And it looks like they're kind of expanding their portfolio a little bit too, so that's good. 1948, more dramatic cave-ins in Picher. 1949, the Eagle Pitcher Mill closed off 4 square blocks in downtown area. Despite the shoring of the mines, they warned the middle of Picher was in danger of imminent collapse. So a few years later, the price of lead and zinc drops, and so mines begin to close. 1950.
The middle of the town. I just love that it was the middle of the town.
Yeah, this town was literally built on top of the mine. And not just this, there's like a few small towns in the area. This is a huge area. So I'm getting into right here, 1950. It's called the Tri-State District. But yeah, basically the mines are built on top, or the towns are built on top of the mines. Total production in 1950 had reached or surpassed 1 billion. Also at the beginning of here, so DuPont, General Motors, Standard Oil, and Ethic Corporation are being investigated for anti-competitive activities 3 years after their patent expires. So we have more warnings about collapses in Picher. Oh yeah, so this is a continuation of the downtown area closing. So 200 businesses are forced out. The middle area is dormant for 45 years.
Talk about the definition of unsustainability to literally build 200 businesses on top of the thing you're digging out, right from under you. That's just so insane.
You'd think that would not, somebody would have been like, hey, this is probably not a good idea based on the fact that we need pillars. You'd think they'd do it once maybe, and then it's just weird they did it over and over and over again like that.
Yes, it really is. Especially on this scale, it's crazy.
Yeah. That's bad for your bottom line. You'd think based on the money element again, you would place the town differently.
Yes.
Oh, whatever. I guess by that point, by the point it's going to destroy the town, though, you're done with the mine, so who cares? Yeah,
I don't know. The other funny thing that I just thought of since you mentioned that is this. So this lead, a lot of it's being used in leaded gasoline, which powers the cars, which were just coming onto the market as all this was happening. So build your town away from the mine and drive to work.
Yeah, again, it seems like they missed they left some money on the table with this strategy, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. No, it's a good point. I hadn't thought of that. I was like, oh man, like, yeah, because Henry Ford thought of all that stuff. He was like, he like really put the whole factory thing. Like, he like every aspect. He like thought of everything.
Yeah.
All the pieces fit together. It was cool. These guys were like, "What's the dumbest thing we can do and make the most money possible?"
Basically, that's basically the strategy here.
Okay, so 1951, we have the first restriction of leaded paint in the U.S. in Baltimore. So we see some pushback finally, at least in one area. 1953. General Motors said, oh, this is a famous quote from GM, "What's good for our country is good for General Motors," and vice versa.
I thought that was Dwight D. Eisenhower for some reason.
I don't. Well, I guess honestly, I didn't like look too deep in this. I don't know where is the source. Probably from the Nation article, but that's. I guess either way, like it kind of it's false.
Right.
Well, I mean, true in some senses, but like when you look at it from this point, like it's.
I'm kind of getting pissed off we bailed these people out 100 years later after all this stuff they've done to us.
Oh yeah, I know, right? Yeah, I'll try to go over that a little more quickly in the future because I like hit on that point kind of hard. But yeah, exactly. Like you, I was definitely gonna bring that up. So 1955, we have more prohibitions. 1959, we have. Surgeon General creates another committee. So it was represented on the committee by International Lead, Zinc Research Organization, E.I. DuPont, American Petroleum Institute, all the players, Ethel Corporation, and of course the Kettering Laboratory where this Dr. Cahill guy worked. So then we get, 1960, population of Flint, Michigan peaks. So this is about as good as things get in Flint, Michigan, because of GM's presence. That was 60 years ago now. In 1961, the local lead levels in Philadelphia are found from air samples to be 1.4 to 25 milligrams per meter cubed. So I had this. Let me zoom back up to the top real quick. I'm just saying that for my screen. So that is equivalent to 1 microgram per liter. So 1 microgram per meter cubed is equal to 1 microgram per liter. Micrograms of lead per deciliter. So 1/10 of a liter in the blood, basically.
And
I can't.
That's probably not normal. I'm going to assume that's a lot.
Right. I personally can't visualize it, but that's what it comes out to. And I do get, like, they basically continuously lower the acceptable amount, especially in small children, until, like today, the basic or the general advice is no contamination is the only safe contamination.
That makes sense. That's like asbestos. They say 1 particle could be enough to cause cancer.
Right. And this is mainly in children and young adults, especially before like the brain is fully developed. So like their main focus is like on the effects on the brain early on. Which is kind of like that's the main thread and main thing that I'm trying to pull here too. So that's what I want to hit home. Okay, so we are in 1962 now. 98% of all gasoline sold in the United States, and billions of gallons more is being sold in the rest of the world. There are 200,000 service stations in the U.S. and thousands of others around the globe. So we still have not hit peak use of leaded gasoline in the U.S. That's 1962. And GM and Standard Oil suddenly dump Ethel Corporation on the market. And a small paper company called Albemarle, the Albemarle Paper Manufacturing Company in Richmond, Virginia, buys it for $200 million. It is 18 times its size, and it makes the front page news on the New York Times. So, not
What? It's like a shit. Was that? Were they connected to that paper company? Why would they pay that much?
No, no. So this company just, I don't know,
Saw a deal.
Yeah, completely unrelated. They just, it's, I don't know. It's not normal, but anyway, it is now no longer tied to GM or Standard Oil or DuPont. It is now on its own, basically.
They literally sold it at its peak of the use.
It was still growing, and they had not even hit its peak.
Oh, I thought you said 62 was the peak.
No. 62. This was just like a update on how much leaded gasoline is being used at this point.
Oh, I see what you're saying. It's at its high at that point.
It's still like blowing up. But remember, it was like 1947. The patent expired, so their profit margin is probably smaller, even though the market's growing still.
Right.
But in any case, they cut ties, and it's on its own, and it's managed by some tiny company that had nothing to do with it. Completely out of nowhere.
Crazy.
Yeah. Well, seemingly out of nowhere. It oddly enough seems to be very good timing. So now we are 40 years later in 1964, and if you remember Joseph G. Leslie, he finally dies this year. The rest of the family is in shock, and no one really understands the mystery.
Oh, so he mysteriously died around the time that they mysteriously sold the ethanol company to a paper company.
Yeah, I wasn't going to make that connection, but yeah, that is what happened. Yeah.
All right, so we get rid of the scientist who we had lying all these years, and we sell gasoline co. to paper co. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna guess. I'm not gonna read ahead here, but I'm gonna guess that a hammer is getting ready to come down on GM, and they had some insiders that knew it.
Yep. Here
All right.
it comes. And boom, this is the guy from the Cosmos episode, and they go into really good detail about his life and everything. But this is Mr. Claire Patterson, and he is actually the biggest hero probably in the story, because he's he actually is the catalyst for change. He basically ends any doubt that contamination is not happening. And he does this by his study proving that the world is 4.5 billion years old. And he did that by, he basically invents the clean room. And so he's just becomes obsessed with getting rid of any sort of environmental contaminations. So he's like taking samples from the pyramids and, ice cores and tree rings, and he's just he's like, he really makes an effort to understand like the chemistry and what just the evidence that he's looking at. So he's like looking at it and he's like, man, why is there lead in all of my samples? So he he basically comes to the conclusion that lead had basically contaminated pretty much like
the Earth.
Pretty much the whole Earth. Yeah, exactly. So I'm going into detail of all this stuff that he does, but let's see. Yeah, the ice cores, berry, sandy soil, all this. I'm trying to get to.
So is this how carbon dating was in it? He was trying to age the Earth? Like, what was... Is that what he was trying to determine, the age of things based on their chemical structure, or...
Yeah, so I don't know if this is where carbon dating, radiocarbon dating and all that came out of. I'm assuming it's related. But essentially he comes up, he's just obsessed with contamination in the samples. So he's like just comparing samples from places that could not possibly be contaminated, like the ice cores, stuff buried.
Right.
And he's like comparing that to modern things, and
modern things are just full of lead. Great.
Right. So yeah, he's showing technological activity had raised modern human body lead burdens to levels 600 times that of our pre-technologic ancients. So yeah, like he said, he's going into Egyptian pyramids and tombs and looking at mummies and like all kinds of stuff. So 1966, we continue with. So remember, this whole subcommittee thing is happening. This is when Dr. Cahill admits that. Basically, the only source of new information on the subject was him and his organization. So he's like just admitting his laboratory is just basically laying down the law.
Well,
right.
Good for him. This is around the time his checks are ending, when he said it started.
Yeah, well, so he had 50 years starting in the end of the
20s.
Yeah,
so he still had some checks coming.
Yeah, he still had a while. So in 1967, the mine in Eagle Picher, the largest and longest lived enterprise, I'm assuming for lead, I don't know, that seems like a pretty big claim, ceased production in 1967. So this basically this mining district was huge. And it ends in 1967. And that same year, a mine collapsed that takes 9 homes in Picher. So their problems just continue. In 1969, Patterson details how industrial man had raised his lead burden 100 times the level of atmospheric lead 1,000 times. Wait, what? The burden 100 times. Oh, he raised his own lead level in the body 100 times and atmospheric lead 1,000 times. So he's like ending the Cahill rule.
This is starting to get kind of scary.
Yes.
Like, it's not just you're working in a really dumb factory or building your mine on top of things. It's like we all have lead.
Yeah, it's everywhere. It's everywhere.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Also, I don't know who I thought died earlier. I thought Cahill was dead. I don't know. I think I confused guys.
I made that mistake too.
I'm really upset he's still alive. Like, I didn't want to interrupt, but while we're...
Yeah.
I don't know who died. I don't know if I'm upset about that now. It doesn't matter, but I'm just saying whoever that was, I may have reacted poorly about that.
So yeah, Midgley was the guy that invented leaded gasoline. So he found it as a solution to their engine knock problem.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'm still not
Oh
excited.
yeah, so he's Freon guy who died from his elaborate rope pulley device. Who was the person who
Yes,
died around the time of the sale to the paper company?
that's the he was just a worker in the like one of the first factories.
Yeah, he's the guy that
Oh,
got
well,
put
I
up
feel
for
bad for
40
making fun of
years.
that guy now. I got him confused with T.O.
Yeah,
for a second. Okay, my bad.
No, yeah, that's the guy they put up for 40 years that only his wife and son knew where he was.
right.
Okay, yeah, it
Yeah,
probably should. Okay.
it's not even clear that his son knew. Like he might have just found out. He might have found out at the time of his death too. I don't know that for sure. But
Wow.
yeah, like where's Daddy? Oh, he's dead. And then you find out. Oh, he died today.
And then you're like a
Uh,
45-year-old man and you're like, "Wait, what? My dad's been
right,
where?"
right.
Wow. All right then.
But if not the son, at least the extended family had no idea. Yeah. So. Yeah, so basically, here in 1969, yeah, the hammer drops. So the four major U.S. auto companies listed as co-conspirators. Um, they are basically now they have to face their air pollution problems. So they would settle the government suit in September by agreeing to terminate their compact as well as all joint research, publicity, and lobbying on emissions issues. And so this officially makes ethyl on its own. And that was, so what would it be, like 5 years out from the sale?
Yeah,
So
they
it's
were they
almost
were
like they read the writing on the wall.
yeah, they were prepping for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So 1970s begins our next big era, and this is the era of reform and environmental pushback. So I have a little statement from GM president here. So they tell a flabbergasted audience that they will start using catalytic converters beginning in 1974. Lead cannot be used in a catalytic converter because it ruins the platinum surfaces, and so lead would have to be phased out of gasoline. And the catalytic converter was introduced to limit other air pollutants. So this whole thing probably happened, or at least was helped happen by like the smog issue. So it's like it became suddenly visible, and so people started worrying about it more.
Wow. Yeah, that's the
But
way we work.
yep. So the catalytic converter effectively ends leaded gasoline. By the end of 1970, the last mine had shut down in Picher, Missouri, or Picher, Oklahoma. I don't know why I keep saying Picher, Missouri. But it's actually right over the border. It's like right down the road from KC. Okay, so in 1971, the Lead-Based Paint Poisoning Prevention Act passes. President Nixon signs it. So this is beginning on the national level now. We have a massive shaft collapse in Picher, Oklahoma. Again, a 110-foot hole, 8 foot in diameter, in the middle of a federal housing project.
Oh no.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
wow. Okay.
This is
Nobody
early
considered the
70s.
existence of a mine when they decided to build a federal housing project. Cheap
Yeah,
land.
the
Yeah.
repetition of building stuff on top of mines is actually kind of getting a little annoying.
Yeah. This is early 70s.
Well, we already own the land, so we're just using the space. Like, all right.
Yeah. Okay, so 1972, the intended phase out begins of leaded gasoline. Also, Ethel Prince A annual report: continued penetration of expanding world markets would lessen any impact on domestic sales. Lead poisoning in children is set in 1972 at 40 micrograms per deciliter. So remember that. Even if that number is meaningless to you, just remember 40. And this is in children, by the way. And that's in 1972. So in 73, finally, leaded gasoline peaks. Amounted to 200,000 tons of lead used per year in the United States. Still increasing in overseas markets. In 1974, so we are having the fight of this, which mainly involves ethyl now, is starting to heat up. So this continues for a few years. Yeah, I'm noticing the time mark, so I might have to skip through ahead of these a few. Hopefully we can make it under 3 hours. Lead-based paint officially banned in 78. The effects of children, more reports coming out here. So in 1980, the definition of occupational lead poisoning changed from KHO's 80 micrograms per deciliter to a level of 60. So,
and children are already at 2/3 of that. Great.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. I don't show in here that they raised it to in children, but that's where we're at in the occupational workplace. 1.3 million tons of lead each year being used, about 40% of the world's supply. Carter loses to Reagan. So this kind of tips the scales in the industry a little bit. Also at this time, 47% of food and soda cans were soldered with lead. So it's regularly in contact with our food. And of course, cans were, before cans it would have been jars. But cans are like pretty much widespread at this point. So where are we at? 1981. Almost immediately, Vice President George Bush creates a task force to relax or eliminate the lead phase out. Another report comes out. Yeah, I know, right? It's
I was unaware of that.
This back and forth happens. It heats up and it just continues and it's still going on. But
I would figure after the 1970s, there wouldn't be like a pro-lead group. We'd all be anti-lead.
Yeah, you would think so. They do start winning and they start making headway, but the pushback is as big as ever. The other thing that starts dropping now is reports are coming out about the benefits of decreasing the use of lead. So now a lot of the reports are going to be focusing on that. So they're looking at blood levels declined by 37% in association with 50% drop in the use of leaded gasoline. So they're like, hey guys, this is working. In 1982, standards are lowered again from 200 milligrams to 50. This is workplace era, and they keep jumping back between these two ways of measuring it. But I think it was essentially like a 1-for-1 if you do the conversion. But they keep jumping back and forth, and I'm just like copying and pasting what the articles are saying. So hopefully that doesn't get too confusing. Okay, so a leaked statement comes out from the EPA administrator that she would not enforce violations of current lead limits. So this causes kind of a public outcry, and it effectively causes this phase out to be sped up in 1982. So the task force backfires.
Good.
And yeah. And then in 1983, this is a major report. So I'll probably kind of glance over the ones from here on out, but this one from the Britain Royal Commission on Environmental Pollution concluded that lead was so dispersed so wisely by man in the 20th century that it is doubtful whether any part of the Earth's surface or any form of life remains uncontaminated by man-made lead. Ouch. So that one hurts. Also, same year, the Tar Creek Superfund site is established, and that includes Picher, Oklahoma, and some of these other towns in Ottawa County.
How big is this Superfund? Is it just counties and counties?
It is this entire county in northeastern Oklahoma. It extends into Kansas. There's a town in Kansas, southern Kansas. I think I might have information on it further down, but it's huge.
That's nuts.
And this is so Superfund sites are basically environmental disaster areas, and it essentially kind of shifts the burden onto the public for cleanup. Initially there was like a tax, a corporate tax or something like that funded it, but that expires in a few years, and so now it's basically funded by the public.
Well, that's exactly what it does. Usually they tell the companies to do it, but if you don't do it, eventually the public, like you said, the public just somebody has to do it.
Oh yeah, so you probably this
is nuts. I can't believe that counties. That makes sense though. If it's collapsing towns getting into the water, just every piece of land or water would be infected with this stuff.
Yeah, it's kind of all these things pile on top of each other, becomes so bad. It's just they just kind of in a few years they just kind of give up. So in 84, there's a countersuit. It gets dismissed on jurisdictional grounds. This is to stop the phase out. Oh no, that was Lead Industries Association. So that's like kind of probably all. It's probably related to all regulations, I'm assuming. So we have some more reports here. 80% fewer lead in children would have identified if no gasoline had been allowed since 1977. This little bit on Picher, Oklahoma, I thought was kind of cool. So a gorilla statue was erected in 84 because they won a football championship. 65 feet below the gorilla statue is a cavern, 106 feet tall, 300 feet in diameter, and is supported by a single concrete pillar 18 feet in diameter. A toothpick is what it's called by a local guy there. It's just madness.
It sounds like they picked a good spot.
Yeah.
I mean, they put it right on top of the pillar. I mean, that's going to be the support area. Come on.
Right.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Their mascot's the gorilla because the town is known for being irrational and aggressive.
That may be. So we have more studies in 1985. We have another update to lead poisoning in children, revised from 40 micrograms down to 25 micrograms. It would be revised down to 15 in 1990, and shortly after to 10. So we are making
Stuff
progress.
like that always gives me hope, even though I know you're getting ready to depress us more. Stuff like that, the fact that you could make that type of progress in a few years gives me hope.
Yes. Yeah, like I said, the 70s is like really the reform era. Like we start to get some pushback. So it is a new era. So in 86, the phase out was complete. So primary phase out is complete. Sorry. So for the most part, we are now lead free in our gasoline. And leaded pipe for water is now banned in 80, and in solder. So making some progress. And this is all with Reagan also. So even though like there seemed to be some initial pushback, or some initial like maybe the environmentalists were going to lose, like it ended up actually picking up pace. So in 1988, 2 million children were so the blood level levels was reduced in 2 million children every year from 1970 to 1987. So we're just getting, the evidence is mounting that this is helping, right? Also a statement come from, so this ethyl company transforms into octal. I feel like I skipped over that somewhere earlier in here. Yeah, so some of these, I'm trying to speed it up a little bit, so I might miss some key points if I don't have it specifically highlighted. But we're now talking about octal, which is previously ethyl. A services manager says many funerals have been arranged for lead. The grave has been dug, service arranged, coffin prepared, the parsons and mourners instructed, but the body just would not lie down in the coffin. So these are kind of famous quotes from this.
I mean, that sums it up pretty well.
Yeah, exactly. So 1990, like I said, the levels are still continuing to be revised down. In 91, so Venezuela State Oil Company exported unleaded gasoline, but it was importing TEL and adding it to all gasoline sold for domestic use. And this in the country with the greatest number of automobiles per capita in Latin America. So this is just kind of a little zoom in on leaded gasoline use outside of the U.S. So like I was saying earlier, it's like picking up outside the U.S. And also this rule, which, I'm trying to skip over the stuff I don't need to, but there's like so many little things that you gotta hit. So this is a regulation about replacing water lines. So under the rule, if more than 10% of the home water test in a system show lead levels above 15 parts per billion, utilities must use chemicals to make water less corrosive, replace lead service lines, and notify the public. So the important part there is they are actually adding stuff in some cases to prevent the corrosion of the lead. So like they're very much aware of the dangers. And they're also, that's like kind of beginning the fight of who's liable to replace these service lines. And this fight goes on for a while. So this is another study in 1992 of North Americans. So this is another thing people do are looking at levels of pre-industrial humans to current humans. So in this case, 625 times lower than the current safe levels. These were inhabitants of North America. And then in 1992, Robert Cahoe finally dies.
There it is, finally. But he
There we
almost got
go.
like all at
I
99.
take
So
back
he got
everything I said about that miner. Yeah, there we go.
he got all 50 years of his payments.
Yeah, and he got to enjoy it for like another 20 years.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
That's frustrating.
Yep. And he's singled out as, like I said, the author of the Cahoe Rule, which is like what people people kind of point to the tobacco industry a lot of the times, but it was really this guy with lead that kind of really showed everyone how to do it. I guess at least in the modern era.
The OG.
Yeah, his playbook's definitely been used again and again.
Yep. Okay, so maybe I was jumping the gun on ethyl, so it looks like it still hasn't completely become octyl. But in 1993, that's what happens. So maybe I got the years mixed up a little bit on this one, but anyway, ethyl becomes octyl, Associated Octyl Company Limited, the world's only remaining producer of tetraethyl lead. American Waterworks Association, also in 1993, represents more than 4,000 public and privately owned water systems. So this is they're like one of the players arguing who's liable for the service lines. And then in 1993 we have NAFTA. So we have, I'm just gonna skip over that, but basically this is like part of putting the burden of proof on the public, and it's kind of tipping the scales more in corporate interest, especially international corporate interest.
And I had no idea NAFTA had anything to do with that. That's I knew it wasn't good, but that's pretty bad.
Yeah. Yeah, so I've highlighted some cases of following this, some corporations, some suits that followed in that, following the passage of that. But since we're approaching 3 hours, I'm going to kind of skip over that because we've still got to get into the 21st century. So 1995, we have some bans on leaded solder in food cans. 96, the World Bank calls for a complete ban on leaded gasoline. So that's at a UN conference. So this is like, everyone's just kind of like, okay, we shouldn't be doing it internationally either, guys.
Well, that's got to be a huge development issue if you're some developing country and you're getting all this leaded stuff shipped in, and your kids are coming down with all this stuff. I mean, that's awful.
Right. And we're exporting this problem too. That's there's really no evidence that the rest of the world would have adopted this unless America led the way. So that's so here at the bottom of 1990, where are we at? 96 now. So I show that it is affecting New Zealand even. So they are sitting here pointing out the exact same thing, that the customers make the companies rich, and then they also pay for the cleanup later on. A little update on Picher, Oklahoma. A study comes out, 34% of the children suffered from lead poisoning due to the environmental effects. So that's
How is that? I thought that was a ghost town already.
No. It is basically falling in on itself, but we're not at the end of the story in Picher, Oklahoma yet.
That's terrible.
Yeah, no, I mean, even
The
after
gorillas. I was wondering that when you mentioned the gorillas. I was like, what? Why would...
Right. No, so they're still celebrating building statues. Like, it's crazy. And there's been several documentaries about Picher, Oklahoma, and so I'm kind of pulling this thread a little bit. But like, if you really want to get into that, there's a lot of information out there on that. And there's actually a ton of drone footage on YouTube of people flying over the town. It's crazy. It's kind of a what do they call it? Like a macabre tourist attraction.
Yeah.
So we have more studies, and then coming out in 1997, children are 4 to 5 times more susceptible to lead effects than in adults because, the development of the brain. And then in 2000, this Nation article comes out. And so I kind of wanted to highlight that because that was really reading this is what kick-started my whole little research on this. Because I just thought it was such a crazy story and I didn't know a lot of it.
Yeah, this has been a pretty insane story.
Yes, so the European Union finally bans leaded gasoline in 2000. Department of Housing and Urban Development estimates 38 million houses and apartments before 78 contain at least some lead paint. Update on this lead and copper rule. Permits so-called partial pipe replacements from the water main to the private property line. So if you remember way back when in the early 1900s, they were leaving the residential plumbing up to the residents. That's where this comes into play. So they are basically arguing now that they only have to go to the street. So there's still the potential for lead to be left in if the homeowner doesn't know about or doesn't opt to change out their lines. We have a census update in Picher, Oklahoma. The population is down to 1,640 now. Their peak was like mid 20,000s in the 1920s.
Is there still a Dairy Queen?
I don't know for sure.
I'm gonna say there's yes. A Dairy Queen, it will survive. There will be some people who stay there.
2001. This is a nice little story. Madison, Wisconsin begins replacing their water lines, and by 2012 had replaced 8,000 lead water lines. It was a pioneering $19.4 million effort. So this is the capital of Wisconsin for $20 million replaced all their leaded lines.
It's so doable.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
And they're probably one of the few exceptions that actually did that.
Right. Yeah, a rare exception, unfortunately. So we have more studies. 2002, the economic benefit for each newborns ranges from 110 billion to 319 billion. So that's each person, and I'm guessing that's just based on productivity that they're kind of figuring that out. I didn't go into too much detail, but that's crazy.
Just like in America, how much a person is worth, productivity-wise?
I'm guessing that's how they're coming up with this, but they're basing it on IQ.
Oh, I see.
Well, yeah, that's the collective number for the babies born that year.
Right.
Like all the babies are worth like whatever it was, 100 some billion dollars, like in productivity. Not
Oh, I
just
thought that
like
was per
not
baby.
one of them. Those are some really productive babies if they're
I thought
each.
he said per baby.
That's what that. I mean, I'm not like I'm. In most cases, I'm copying and pasting. So, estimated economic benefit for each year's newborns ranges. Yeah.
Okay,
So I.
okay.
Yeah, I thought it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say I thought it was plural.
Okay. Yeah. No. I heard what I wanted and not what I read too. So. Yeah, I'm with you, Dennis. That confused me too, even though I was the one reading. Okay, so 2003. Oh, yeah, I was looking for the obituary for the original Joseph Leslie, but I think I found his son, so I threw that in here in 2003. Like I said, I was like going nuts. Like some of these threads, I would like literally pull them all the way to the obituaries. I was like got crazy with it. Um, 2004. We have another project to replace lead lines, $42 million project in Lansing, Michigan, not far from Flint, 60 miles from Flint. And so that was, I don't know when that was completed, but begins in 2004. 2005, lead levels, unsafe levels found in tap water in city after city. Some of these I have the links, as you can see. So we have Durham and Greenville, North Carolina in 2006. And this is kind of a thread, or this is a running theme also. It's going to continue popping up. 40 out of America's 50 largest cities have lead pipes. The Great Lead Water Pipe Disaster. This is a book published in 2006. So that's like a in-depth. I didn't like look at this book or like bring it up or anything, but it seems to be like one of the most heavily referenced resources on lead pipes in America. So I threw that in there. Update in Picher, Oklahoma. 86% of Picher's buildings are in danger of collapse at any time. In some cases, it would cause a 50-foot drop, including the town school.
Oh my! Get out, people! Just get out. There could not
Yes.
be anything going on there that's worth it.
It's nuts. So, since 1938, 30 significant cave-ins. Reported by the Tulsa World. Countless other sinkholes that have gone unreported, according to locals, including this guy, Ed Cahaley, which I mentioned earlier. He's like kind of the resident historian, along with that Hoppy guy, which is about to re-enter the story. But I just threw in this little snapshot of him because he is your main. He's kind of your hero figure for the town of Picher, one of the few. And he's also the authority on the mines and the extent of mining in Picher, Oklahoma. Oh yeah, I should actually mention I talked to him too. Like I called him up while I was in the middle of this, and he called me
Oh,
back.
really? Wow.
Yeah, I don't even know why I didn't think to mention that till I was about to move on. But yeah, he's a really great guy, and I'll have to remember to throw up. Yeah, here's his email address even. But he's very willing to talk, especially about lead and Picher. But honestly, like all this information is out there. A lot of it thanks to him too, especially on the mining. But yeah, he's a really nice guy. and you know, being a resident of the town, like you could tell he like felt sorry for the people in the town, and he wasn't like mad at him when I was talking to him, but he was just kind of, I guess you just come to a certain point where you just kind of, you know, like, well, what's happening is happening, and I've done all I can.
He's like, well, I already know that I'll be sitting on my couch someday and it's be taken by the earth. So randomly,
Right.
it's awful.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh no, he leads the effort for the town to be shut down. So he got out early. His family got out and moved to California.
Oh,
Really
good.
early.
Good for him.
Right, but he just kind of had this solidarity with the town that he had all his life. So he came back and he really kind of led the effort and all the study that eventually convinced people that it was worth they needed to move on.
So he is a hero. That would have been a disaster.
Yeah, I mean, but we're still early. Things still get worse. But the end is in sight for Picher, Oklahoma. So in 2007, I kind of highlight more stuff about international use, especially places like China and Africa, that regulation is going to be lax. Then we have this guy, another hero, Mark Edwards. He's awarded some MacArthur Genius Grant for his work on contamination in drinking water. So he becomes a major player in that, which this fight is picking up at this time. So we have some more studies on the psychological effects. Finally, here linking it to criminal behavior and aggression. This is a major study. Where was this coming out of? I guess it's part of the Clean Air Act. Is nber.org, whatever that acronym's for. So I've got the link there. So that's always helpful. It's like I like it when I do that, especially like when I came back to this like several months later. I was like, oh my god, you're all over the place, man. It's like piecing this all back together in my head.
Oh yeah, we feel you. Yeah. Oh, we have that exact. It's hard. The hardest part is never the amount of info. It's always condensing it or organizing it.
Right.
Yeah, it can be a pain.
So we have now hit the 3-hour mark, by the way. But hitting again on sacrifice zones. So I highlight a few Eagle Picher Superfund sites. Remember, they are like the Eagle Picher or Eagle Lead is like one of the first lead companies in the U.S. So they have 3 Superfund sites tied to them. And you can kind of, I mean, if you really want to depress yourself, you can go down the Superfund rabbit hole. But there are, so to date, over 1,500 sites listed. 320 sites have been deleted. But yeah, cleanup construction has been completed at 1,000 sites. So it's just, this is a massive effort, and it's not just lead, but this lead company alone has got like 3 sites to their name. And so here General Motors is back beginning in 2007. Of course, we all know what's about to happen here. But I did highlight real quick that their main product that they were pushing was like the big gas guzzling vehicles offered at 0%, selling like SUVs and other things. So they are like, yeah. Moving on, update on Picher, Oklahoma. Residents vote 142 to 132 to reject a plan to merge the school system So they are still fighting to keep the town alive. And here is Hoppy. And here's a picture of him in his old age. He is 81 years old at this point. He says there is nothing in this town that can't be fixed. He just says that the
Colonel
people that... what's that?
Wasn't he one of the people who admitted to taking off the things on the mines that held it up?
Yeah, he wasn't the guy that I quoted, but he definitely would have known about it. Yeah.
He's like, yeah, we had to take off those old... Oh, Hoppy. I love Hoppy.
Yeah, it's nuts. And yeah, this guy, he's kind of... he was a big celebrity in the town and the surrounding area. And I mean, I can see why. Like, there's still videos of him, and you know, he's in the documentaries. He's featured. He's like the town. If Picher, Oklahoma had a face, it would be Hoppy. And he just comes from that era, and it was like a huge gambling and mining. I mean, it was like the Las Vegas of you know, that area of the mining district and the Prohibition era for the Midwest. I mean, it was a hopping place.
I'm a fan of Hoppy. Hopping place.
Yeah.
I like what you did there.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, so I think that it's like a lot of his ties to it is just nostalgia, right?
Right.
So 2008, the story turns things get really bad in Picher, let's say that. A major tornado hits the town. F4 tornado causes extensive damage, 6 fatalities, extensive and widespread damage to many of the residences. And it's just like, I mean, like, how many hits can the place take? But this is like 2008, so yeah, we're beginning to get to the end of that story. Levels are tightened again here from 15. So they begin a phase in over the next 10 years. A study of studies reports over 6,000 studies have confirmed the dangerous effects of lead, especially in children, as it lowers their IQ and damages learning and memory abilities.
6,000 studies. So many studies. You could do a study on just the studies. That's...
Yeah. Right. So hopefully we can stop bringing up studies, but... and then in 2008, the financial crisis happens. Of course, we have the $700 billion in bailout money is established. Warnings say that without bailout, GM and Chrysler will face bankruptcy. Obama begins to lobby for bailout of the auto industry. And yeah, this is from the Nation article, so if you want to read in more depth, they do a pretty good job, I think, of laying out like the timeline here. So I'll probably skip over some of the things. But that story is pretty crazy. Ultimately, the UAW union accepts reduced payments. So, you know, that's part of the deal.
How much of the bailout was for replacing lead pipes?
I'm not sure. I didn't come
That would
across
probably
any of
create a
that.
lot of good paying jobs. There's so many lead pipes to get rid of.
That is a great thought. If only you were at some of these meetings. Yeah.
If only like one study had said that this is a really important thing to do.
Right. Yeah, they had really nothing to kind of lean on as maybe, you know, just like, hey, you know, this is worth it to do it if we just throw a few $1 million this way.
Well, that's what that thing was supposed to be for. They kept saying infrastructure, infrastructure, infrastructure. You don't see any new roads or anything, but it's like, that's infrastructure. That would have been a good
Yeah.
idea. You know what? We should still probably do it though. So I'm gonna stop.
Oh, right.
Yes, yeah.
Any time would be a great time. Yes. Okay, so we have update in Picher, Oklahoma. A 15-foot wide sinkhole develops 40 feet into standing water. 15 feet across, 40 feet down into standing water. Opens up. The town votes 55-6 to dissolve the school district. So another vote. The school district is now dissolved, and so this is like kind of the town is winding down at this point. June 2009, GM enters bankruptcy. Stockholders lose their investment. So the government steps in. They begin backing all new warranties. The subsidies for new cars, all this stuff. If you know familiar with the history, like we basically took control of a lot of the company. They begin to recover the same year. I'm now at the middle of 2009 here. Lead paint in the U.S., 37.1 million homes have lead-based paint somewhere in the building, so like more studies coming out. Again, it's like mostly before 1978. 3.6 million homes with children less than 6 years of age are probably exposed to some sort of hazard. Each dollar invested in lead paint hazard control results in a return of $17 to $221 in net savings. So, hundreds of billions. So, more studies along that same line. Back to Picher, Missouri. 2 years ago, Orville Hoppy Ray vowed it would take someone meaner than him to leave the town where he was born. You can't fight City Hall.
Is he still kicking there? Is he like the only guy there, just chilling out with the gorilla?
Oh, you spoke like 5 seconds too soon.
Oh no.
Ultimately, he says you can't fight City Hall. So Ray, who worked in the mines in the 40s, who ran a musty pool hall in the main drag, said they've squeezed him 7 ways till Sunday. In September 2009, the state of Oklahoma officially disincorporated the city of Picher, which ceased operations on that day. And just a few months later, Jesse Orville Hoppy Ray dies on December 14th.
Oh man, that man was the town.
Yeah.
Freaking legend.
Yes. So I like I said, I even pulled his obituary, which I found online, which was kind of cool. So if you're interested in reading that is available on the screen right now for some of you. And then we begin in 2010. We have another study of ancient peoples, this time focusing on the Romans. So 200 samples from Britain and the Neolithic to late medieval periods. They found lead levels over 20 milligrams per kilo I don't know what that measurement is. Is that per kilogram probably? Maybe it's micrograms per kilogram. 20 times higher than modern recommendations. In fact, this level is 2 times higher than the level the WHO considers very severe lead poisoning. And this is in the bones of Romans.
So those ads were kind of prophetic.
You're right. Yes. Measured against other Romans and pre-Romans from Britain and other areas. So we have more studies. on water in DC, 15,000 homes possibly contaminated. Looks like we have a massive effort to remove lead pipes. Oh, so this is the one. Yeah, okay, so remember that partial replacement? This study focuses on that. So homeowners who had only partial replacement may have found or made the problem worse. Inadvertent result of efforts to disinfect the water supply that caused lead pipes to corrode and leach into the water that flowed through them. So just the act of replacing the pipe, causes contamination.
Oh no, that makes perfect sense. Oh no.
Right. Possibly adding those small particles in the water lines. So, yeah. So, that's why the fight against the partial replacement thing is so important. 2011. The Quepa Indian tribe takes back ownership of the Tar Creek Superfund site. So, and they did this voluntarily. So they actually become, they are finally allowed ownership of the land which was originally theirs, and it's now a disaster zone. But they are put in charge of removing.
God.
Yeah, they're in charge of cleanup and removal of all the material and everything.
That doesn't seem fair. I can't put my finger on what doesn't seem fair about that, but this doesn't seem.
I don't know how these negotiations happen. Oh yeah, initially they don't even get the profits of the removal of the sale of some of the contaminated materials. I mean, it's just nuts. I don't even get it. But,
yeah.
Okay, so we have, still in Picher, Missouri, 6 homes and 1 business remain after the town had been dissolved. Owners refusing to leave at any price.
Oh my God.
Yeah. 2012, remember that phase in, so they're lowering the accepted levels of lead contamination in the blood. More studies come out of children with high blood levels. Finally, you get an admission: there is no safe level of lead in blood in children. From the CDC in 12. I don't know if that's the first ever mention of that or first ever statement like that, but that's the first main point that I found. So in 2012. 2013, we have more of the same. We have the last lead plant in Missouri closes. 145 employees of the Doe Run lead smelter learned they will lose their jobs at the end of December. And so it sort of begins and ends in Missouri, but not until 2013. What else do I need to hit? And it doesn't look like much. Oh yeah, the municipality of Picher is officially dissolved on November 26th. So I guess there's just a lot of formalities going on in the background. 2014, I put in a little study about lead ammunition, which I have not even talked about up until this point. But this is a call by 120 parties to phase out the use of lead ammunition across all habitats and use non-toxic alternatives within the next 3 years. So if you think about that, that's just another way we are just basically spreading lead contamination yeah, anywhere and everywhere. And most of this in our natural areas, so our national parks or wherever, public lands where like hunting's allowed, just wherever. Probably mostly private land, actually, now that I say that, but on some public land. So lead paint, kind of the extent of that. Found it still legal in 40 countries, mostly developing countries. This is in 2014. And then in 2014, Flint, Michigan switches its water supply source from Lake Huron to the murky waters that run through Flint. They do this in April.
Here we go.
May, yeah, I know, right? Yeah. In May, citizens are already complaining about hardness, odor, and the color of water. So here we go. We're approaching the end though, so we are like 2014 now. We have our Flint hero, Leanne Waters, a 37-year-old mother with 4 children, self-described Jersey girl. So she's like notices this early on, and she begins it complaining about it. She's getting no responses. She starts teaching herself how to examine and test her water. She's looking up like testing methods.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So she's like becomes a water purity expert. One of the things, her quote here: "If you don't know what you're talking about, they can do whatever they want, say whatever they want. Excuse me, but if you know what they're talking about, they have to listen to you." So she's like probably got sick of being on the phone with them and be like, "Look, I'm going to start telling you how it is,"
Yeah, I got to literally become a scientist before you listen to me.
Yeah, exactly. So the kind of the cap on the GM thing, 5 years later, they have made $22.6 billion. Taxpayers lost a total of $10.6 billion on the bailout that saved the company. And this is happening. This is, of course, right as they are announcing they are going to stop using water from the Flint River because it's corroding their machines.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so it's good to drink, good for the residents to drink, not good for our machines. Also around this time, an interview of Hoppy's son comes out, and he's being all nostalgic in this, talking about how he painted the walls in there. We'd swim in the cave-ins that were filled with water, and he wonders if his school troubles, his short college experience, health problems, kidney disorders, he wonders if those are related maybe to his childhood lead exposure.
I wonder. That's terrible.
I know. What did I say? Yeah. When they were a kid, they put it in their coffee grinder. It had a sweet taste. It was everywhere. I mean, just all these quotes from him about his childhood. Okay, so we are in 2015. This is a quote from Obama. "The auto companies have now repaid taxpayers every dime and more of what my administration invested in." Of course, we learned earlier that's not entirely true. But to say they have paid back every dime and more requires considerable cherry picking. This is from the Nation article again. And it details kind of how he came to that conclusion. So he counts money the automakers paid back for Bush administration loans. He ignores facts that would have given a different impression. So they rule that his statement's mostly false.
Have you ever been somewhere like a hotel room where in a town you've never been in, and the water is kind of sweet. I swear I have experienced this on like road trips before, and I'm just like, that's weird. I wonder
guess I've never.
how far. I'm thinking about a couple specific times I've taken road trips. Oddly enough, down to Texas through Oklahoma, where I kind of. I wonder if this isn't as more widespread than. I don't know. Yeah, that's depressing about General Motors too. I mean, anyway, it's just ironic that that never really played into the discussion. I don't remember that at the time, that they kind of helped create this whole thing of Flint. We just kind of considered it two different issues.
Yeah, that's that was the connection I was trying to make. We basically rescued them, and then here in their what is it, basically their hometown, they are not only are they ignoring it, but they're like shielding themselves while they're just like not caring about anyone else. It's just crazy. More of the same though.
That's about par for the course.
Yeah. Okay, so we are in 2015 now. So this water supply fight continues. State of emergency is declared. The governor declares a state of emergency. Obama declares a state of emergency at the beginning of 2016. Oh yeah, the end of 2015, final resident Gary Linderman and the final business of, so it's the pharmacy in Picher. He dies from a sudden illness. The population is officially called zero, and then that's the end of the business. So that is really what's pointed to as the end of Pichers in 2015.
The end of Picher.
And you can he's got a quote from like just a few months before he dies, and he is still saying that he thinks there's a future in Picher, Oklahoma. It's just it's crazy.
Mind-boggling.
Okay, so I already said Obama declares a state of emergency in 2016. EPA takes control of the water crisis. Criminal charges are filed against government employees. Obama visits Flint and drinks a glass of filtered water. So, they made a big deal about him. Have
you ever seen that video of the activist talking about that? It's nuts. I'll have to forward it to you or text it to you or something if I can find it. I saw it on Facebook. I've been off Facebook, but there's this video of people talking about. He did it twice actually. He did it at his public speech. He asked for water. They tried to give him a bottle, and he's just like, "No, I want a glass." And then he said something about how he's sure when he was a kid he ate some lead paint, and then he did the same thing at like a private press conference afterward.
Yeah, I don't know what to make of. I like Obama, but here it's kind of hard to ignore that.
Well, it's a weird thing. Yeah, I'm honestly shocked. I didn't know about any of this until I think earlier this year. I was like, they did what? It's just, it's nuts.
Yeah. So, especially on top of everything, it's just, it just shows you how, a lot of this history, if you don't talk about it, you don't realize how often it just repeats itself and how bad it really is, just under the surface. And how, there seems to be such a big effort just to cover it up and act like nothing's wrong, when we should know by now that in the end it's worse to not do anything.
Totally.
I don't know. Okay, so I go on a long story of kind of this whole involvement with the EPA, since hopefully some of this is still fresh in a lot of our minds. I'm just gonna scroll past a lot of this. But of course, in 2016, Trump wins the presidency. And so this, there was some efforts and some, I guess, I don't know. So this whole phase in is still happening of reducing the blood level levels. And some wins on the regulatory side, but at this point, it basically just puts a halt to that progress. So that's why I highlighted that happening. A little zoom in on Flint's records. It finds that their city records are in horrible shape, but that's not the case everywhere. So I highlighted a couple places where they kept good records. So you are solely dependent on the records of your former predecessors. This is a quote from some city official. Study released this month estimated 460,000 lead service lines in Michigan alone, more than almost any other state. So, not sure why Michigan is kind of the ground zero for this, with GM and the lead gasoline and lead pipes, but
yeah, that's really weird.
So yeah, another update. Okay, so the Lansing, Michigan, replacing their water pipes ends in 2017. So that they finished their work, which they began. What was 2004? I think was what it was. So yeah, there are good examples. We don't have to be all negative.
Has anyone done a study of what it would take to just wipe this problem out? I mean, obviously you can't get rid of the damage done to people, but to just make sure nobody ever has to drink water out of this stuff again. Well, I guess like you said, there's no records a lot of the time, so God, it's so depressing. Hope we still have hope.
Yeah. So at the bottom of my 2016 little block here, I actually talk about that. So there's a study that was done, estimated an additional 1 trillion should be spent over a 25-year period for the most urgently needed pipe replacements, lead and or otherwise. So that's just kind of all-encompassing study.
So a little sliver of what we already gave Wall Street this year when COVID came through.
Right. Yeah. This is probably when they talk about the need for infrastructure spending. This probably is part of that. So then we begin 2017. We are nearing the end here. This was the deadline for that phase-in requirement of the blood levels. It is essentially just kind of pushed off for the future. So it is not...
Oh, God.
Yeah, they don't really review it. They're not like taking a look at it. Regulations have basically just been put on pause. U.S. Today Network investigation finds 2,000 additional water systems spanning all 50 states have shown lead contamination over the past 4 years. Collectively, supply water to 6 million people. So it's, it's almost like, I don't know. It's plus when you add in like the lead paint and the ammunition, the places in the world where leaded gasoline might not still be banned. I didn't even pull that thread yet. It's just such a huge problem.
It's still just coating the earth.
Yeah. So here's a study recently, 10 policies. So this is suggestions to prevent and respond to child lead exposure. Winding down now. So 2018, Scott Pruitt will become the head of the EPA. Remember, he was from Oklahoma. The site of Picher. An audit of the Tar Creek area, which was the Picher area, the Picher Superfund site, finds considerable evidence of a conspiracy against the state.
Wow.
Now, I didn't read into this report too much.
Now, who's responsible right now to clean up Picher? Is it the city, or is it a company, or who's responsible for that
Oh,
Superfund now? Like, who's part of that conspiracy?
well, obviously, like the EPA is still involved because the Superfund is an EPA program. But I don't know exactly how that relates to how the tribe is in charge of it because I know they're actually in charge of the cleanup process now. So I don't know how that works with how funds are distributed, and I didn't look at how Scott Pruitt plays into that. But he was like what, the Surgeon General or something like that of Oklahoma before he became EPA administrator. So
Yeah,
I mean that's probably a whole thing that you could look at on its own. Like this Scott Pruitt guy is probably a whole nother thing. But
right.
um, yeah. So also in 2017, Picher comes back. Some girls go missing in the town. Ed Cahaley comes back because he's so familiar with the mines and the cave-ins and everything. So he's enlisted to help with the search for these missing girls. He says he doesn't want to throw cold water on the hopes of the girls' families, but those numbers alone make the chances of recovering the bodies very slim. And he's talking about 450 of the 1,203 mine shafts were still open. I mean, 104 mine collapses. There's like openings all over.
Yeah. Oh, that's so sad. Man, Picher could be a movie. Someone needs to just make a movie about the last 3 years of Picher with just like stuff randomly sinking in and.
Yeah, I think that's why it's the focus of so many documentaries. Like it keeps popping up a lot. So finally, we are at 2020. Let's wind this down. So you can go to the current EPA.gov on lead. And current study in 2018, some 11.6 million metric tons of lead metal was produced globally. I thought I got into the growing number of electric cars and bicycles is likely to boost demand for lead over the next couple of years, mostly in China. Well, I thought I had a little thing of the current recommendations. Here's a little graph on screen of world production. Still very high, as you can see, not even going down at this point. I thought I had the current lead levels in here. I don't know.
Well, you said we need them for batteries, right? So electric cars are going to end up making this go up?
Yeah, potentially. I mean, it just depends on if it's like a lead battery or like lithium ion, but in general, yeah, the production or demand may not necessarily go down. Hopefully, we can just keep it contained, I guess. But that comes to the end of the study. I thought I had those current lead levels in here, but like it's on the EPA website. The obvious recommended level is 0. Is the ultimate takeaway.
Right. Oh man, that's a great research, man. That was quite a ride. That's a lot, dude.
Yeah, no kidding.
It's not necessarily. Man, I wonder if is there a way to get your own blood levels tested for lead? I kind of know how much lead's in me right now. I'm like,
Yeah.
Right, and how that compares to like the Romans and like the Egyptians and like people in between.
Yeah.
yeah.
But Yeah, so that was it dragged on a little bit longer than I was hoping, but of course I appreciate you guys coming along for the ride, and I think it definitely makes it a lot more interesting and easier to make it to the end without getting depressed if you have somebody else with you.
That's
Oh, I'm
what we're
still
here for.
depressed.
Yeah, Pat, you just went despondent there for the last half hour. You just have your head in your
Yeah,
hands.
pretty much crying a little bit, sobbing, you know.
I don't blame you. It gets a little sad towards the end.
Flint really is a national disgrace that we haven't been able to fix that one place. Like, it's so
Yeah.
disgraceful.
Well, thank you so much for having us, Brian.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, I appreciate it. And like, I don't do things like this all the time. This is the first time anything like this, but yeah, you guys are definitely invited anytime. Hopefully, the next one's not quite this in depth, this long.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's do it again.
Sounds good.
All right, I'm down. All right.
All right, guys. We have had Dennis and Patrick from Cryptic Accounts. This has been lead in the U.S. and used historically. Thank you for watching Today's the Day, and we will see you guys all next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye now. There's lots of other videos to watch, so join me, subscribe, like the videos you like, share the videos you love, let me know your thoughts in the comments, and as always, thank you. You are the fuel to the fire.